How about the Penn State mood tracker on this fine evening? Hiding in plain sight is the mood that I have given to the Penn State fan base. Now, I'm going to say something, but I really have to qualify it. So you know how sometimes if you're at a family reunion, you can bust each other's chops all you want to. There is a way that you can talk to family that you would never allow an outsider to talk about family. And so that's kind of the way Penn State is right now. If you're amongst each other, if I'm embedding myself into the Penn State fan base for the next few minutes, we know where the holes are. We know how perilously thin the linebacker situation is. Safety doesn't look much better. We understand the limitations that we've seen at quarterback. We haven't gotten that figured out yet. We got a new coordinator coming in. Hopefully that solves that. We understand all that. And we're fine talking to each other about that. What we're not willing to do is listen to an outsider talk about how Penn State's an afterthought. Penn State's not an afterthought. You just have to properly contextualize 2020. That's all you have to do. And so if I'm listening to an outsider, this is why I say it's hiding in plain sight, Penn State hasn't gone anywhere. Penn State was one of those programs that we've spoken about many times, even on this very show, that was disproportionately impacted by COVID, and not just the pandemic, but what it did for programs that had a bunch of new pieces that they had to sort out, and then they had spring snatched from them. It's really that simple. There's no reason to overthink the room here, because if you're going to sell me on the idea, the false idea at that 2020 is the real Penn State, you're trying to sell me on the idea that James Franklin and a lot of proven commodities at Penn State forgot how to run the caliber program that they had run the previous 4 years where they were averaging a double-digit win season. It's stupid. It's not just ignorant. Like, that's outright stupidity. And so when I look at the crystal ball, let's say, for Penn State, I think it's a lot more likely in time that they operate at the level that we saw prior to 2020 than the one we saw in 2020. But I want to note, when I'm saying these things, it extends beyond just 2021. This is not necessarily a 2021 prediction segment. The ceiling on this particular season, and the reason I'm so guarded in the language I'm using, is because I've seen those spring depth charts. I've looked at and listened to a lot of the rumblings and whispers coming out of Penn State. It's concerning to look at certain levels of that defense and to ask ourselves, what's the ceiling? Like, if we don't attack the transfer portal, if we don't close our eyes and take a nap and wake up and have things look a lot different by the time we get to fall camp than these current depth projections have us looking at places like linebacker and safety, we can't win 10 games this year. It's just not going to happen. There are going to be too many teams capable of exploiting us through the air. And listen, defensive end has a lot to be figured out on that front as well. So there are areas on this team, obviously, where there are glaring holes. And I'll get back to, how that just leads to James Franklin, again, having to prove himself in just a second. But great staffs find ways to fill holes. And it's not just transfer portal. I'll circle back around to it now. This is where you find out how good a coaching staff you really have. I think I know that Penn State's got a really good coaching staff. I think a lot of times they're falsely held to the standard of excellence that a place like Alabama has. No one's meeting that. But look at the next tier. Look at what Penn State's done over the past 4 or 5 years. You can count 2020 if you want to, discredit it if you want to. I don't care. They've proven themselves. This isn't a new coaching staff. They're not unknown commodities. But here's what you have to do. This is not the NFL. In the NFL, players are who they are largely, and you look at them as pieces or commodities, and they're puzzle pieces. And so on a puzzle piece, it's not hazy. You know what's on the puzzle piece. Either it fits or it doesn't. This is college. It's a developmental sport, but this is the most critical level in this sport of development, at least on the broad stage. Penn State's got to develop. Like, we can't just look at the linebacker and safety positions, for example, and say, got to hit up the portal. Develop the guys you have. You're not going to make them into All-American players, but develop them to where they're not going to cost you football games. They don't have to win you games. Hopefully Tom Yurcich and Sean Clifford and that offense, hopefully you can find a way for offense to win you games. You got to be able to develop enough to where your defense doesn't lose you games. And so I think Penn State's hiding in plain sight because I think this team's a lot closer to being the caliber that it takes to be a New Year's Six bowl contender. Big Ten contender, got a little ways to go to catch up to Ohio State. Grant that. But you can be behind Ohio State and still be a really, really solid program. That's where I think Penn State is right now. That's why I think it's a fair mood to just think that you're hiding in plain sight. It's like everyone's looking around you and past you, and we're right here. Well, we haven't really gone anywhere. I mean, unless you've been fooled by 2020. And yeah, we may have some bumps on our road this year, but we're pretty good, aren't we? Yeah, we're still pretty good. So you don't have to second guess yourself. You can have a lot of pride in this program and rest assured that there are still bright days ahead. I particularly am looking forward to this year and finding out what they are able to do defensively, whether they hit the transfer portal or not. You're going to find out a lot about this coaching staff's ability to develop, because there's a lot of chicken salad that needs to be made, and I'm not so sure what the ingredients are there, to put it in the kindest college football terms that I can.